Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Today we're going to finish up the last two chapters of Samkhya Darshan, chapters 9 and chapter 10. Now, after that, after chapter 9 and 10, there's going to be the original text that this book was founded upon. And that's where we'll see a lot of the source material for what we know of as Samkhya, dealing with Purusha, Prakriti, and the Gunas. So everything before that was a modern and technical view of how Samkhya works. So we're going to finish up that process by dealing with God in the system of Samkhya and a few other things. The color is green because it's a Friday. Peace, Will Trent. Good to see you as always. Who loves orange soda? Peace, my brother. Peace. Good to see you. So I think we'll just dive right into it, honestly. The sun's still out, so we got plenty of time. Plenty of time. So beautiful. I love it. Love it. All the colors. Whew. So yeah, just getting myself back into this rhythm because, I usually don't travel very much. Going to the Master Student Conference kind of took a lot out of me. So I've just been recharging so I can get back into the groove of things. Preparing for this shadow work mastery system. My stack of books is a little bit different here. So I've got a lot of stuff about Carl Jung and the shadow and different types of yoga nidra, and other things dealing with psychology. I just love how it all connects, how it all relates. No matter what subject matter I find myself digging into, it all relates. It all comes back to yoga, Kabbalah, or any other name that we want to give this system of understanding the soul within nature. Love it. Society Ejects. Peace, my brother. Peace. Almost forgot to turn the light on. There we go. Okay. So I'm back on incense for a while, as opposed to the essential oils. I love the oils, but we're gonna do the incense for just a little bit. Just a little bit. Beautiful stuff. Cosmic Chlorophyll asks, hey, I really thought y'all had finished this book. I finished it already. So I'll just be getting a recap. Also, how old will you be next week? I had a dream a couple of weeks ago and they asked your age. Well, I'm definitely not going to answer that question. However, thank you for remembering. It is my birthday in just a few days. All right, so let me flip this camera around. Oh my gosh, it's really amazing how the human mind works. It really is. They say that concept of monkey see, monkey do. Well, obviously it's not limited to monkeys, and it actually goes a lot deeper into our psychology than we realize. There's a study that shows, right, monkey see, monkey do, monkey die. There's been a study that was conducted about how what's presented in the media is hyper influential. They were just showing that whenever they publicized a story about a suicide, whenever someone killed themselves, and they made a big deal about it, maybe it was a celebrity or somebody that people loved, what they find is that number one, suicide rates jump for the next week, and also there's an increase in plane crashes and car crashes. So just doing the study and going through, because that study by itself is like 5 pages long, but they talk about how Just seeing it on the news makes people who are just over the edge go ahead and maybe take the action because they saw somebody else do it. You know, um, look at that. But basically, I don't know. It just makes me question about how, like, when they show these mass shootings all over the news, whether it's in a school or a grocery store or wherever, you'll find that there's a lot of copycats that happen right afterwards. The human mind is a mirror. No man is an island. We literally do so many things that influence everyone around us in our environment, even to degrees that we don't even understand. So yeah, all the more reason to just be very cautious and careful of what you allow into your mind, into your life, because monkey see, monkey do. There isn't much of a way around that. There really isn't. That's just how we operate as human beings. So be careful what you allow yourself to consume on a regular basis. But anyways, let's get to this Samkhya here. And you don't stop. Move this stuff out the way. Poison ivy, poison ivy. Aware says synchronicity has been my favorite word since '96. It's a good word. Cosmic Chlorophyll says I cooked up some vegan curry, eggplant, and squash. It came out pretty good. That sounds pretty amazing. Louis, happy Friday. Peace, bro. Peace. All right. So hopefully, that information wasn't useless. I mean, it's very useful for me. Trust and believe, but also for you. Just be aware. Be aware of the things that you allow yourself to consume, because even if you don't realize it has an influence or an impact on you, I promise you it does. Very rare is the person who is ironclad in their defense against the root social matrix. Root social matrix, if you guys were with me when I read Mimetic Magic, root social matrix basically talks about this subjective system, this network that we are all plugged into. And that doesn't mean some computer system. That means simply coming into contact with other human beings, it automatically updates the program, because we carry and we share memes, right? We carry and we share consciousness. We carry and we share cliches. As a matter of fact, going through the school system has really trained us to think in memes, right? We've been conditioned this way. We've always communicated in symbols, but in particular, American culture is created so that we can communicate quickly through memes. Now, that's not good or bad, that's just the way it is. So if you don't understand that, then it's easy to believe that the only way to think and communicate is through memes. Hence why memes are so popular right now. But just be aware, because when you receive a meme, it can be like a Trojan horse. You're not just taking the good part or the funny part. When you laugh at it and you have that positive reaction, you're also taking any type of negative aspect of the same metaphor. They don't teach us how the mind works. That you have to learn yourself. Okay, well, enough of my psychological rambling. So I love that stuff. Society Eject says, yes, we can see that with all the shooting. Exactly. And you know what? This isn't even new. Like, whenever this has been going on for a very long time. Every time there's a mass shooting and they publicize it on the news, there are several mass shootings that spring up around the same time frame. This has been happening for a long time. Airplanes were being hijacked even before 9/11, and there are studies that show when these airline hijackings took place, there would be a whole rash of airplane hijackings in the 60s and the 70s. Of course, that's been toned down because security. But man, human beings. Looks like Louis knows what I'm talking about. Good shit. Nuru, peace, peace. Will Trent says, I'm even careful with my memes, lol. Bully McGuire, my guy, because he's good at detachment with his. I missed the part where that's my problem. Yeah, I like that one too. Okay, so I will literally sit here and talk all day about this kind of stuff, but not yet. Let's stay focused. Chapter 9, God in Samkhya. Wow, and that happened exactly at 11 minutes and 11 seconds. Perfect. Finally, the question arises as to whether the Samkhya system is atheistic or accepts the existence of God. How can God be understood? Not as a human being, but as cosmic consciousness. God can't be known by the senses or the mind, which are conditioned. God can't be known by the senses or the mind, which are conditioned. Initially, you have to work through the conditionings of consciousness in order to become free. How can the transcendental reality be understood with a non transcendental mind, right? The misconceptions about God arise because man imagines God in his own image, but God is not a physical person. The conditionings of consciousness. And look, see, like I was just reading that book, Influence. I got both the new version and the old version because there's a few slight differences. But looking at these books that talk about how the human mind is influenced helps me exactly to see what is being talked about when they talk about these conditionings of consciousness, right? I just mentioned the story of how when they publicize suicides or mass murders, that more cases begin to pop up. You know, we can call it mirror neurons. You can say monkey see, monkey do, whatever you want to call it. But the fact remains, human beings, we live and breathe by peer pressure, right? We live and we breathe by what's called social proof. When we see someone else doing something, we automatically think that, okay, well, maybe I should do that too. Now, of course, in some people, that tendency is much higher than others. And then some, it's lower, right? It happens to me. It happens to all of us. Say, for example, that isn't going to happen so much for me in like my field of expertise. But say I wanted to buy some new shoes, right? Either I'm going to get something that I might get some Converse and Chuck Taylors because that's what I know from childhood. Or if I want to get something spicy, I'll ask my cousin because he's a shoe expert. And whatever he's doing or whatever he posts or whatever, then that's a good indication of what I should get, right? We find that in situations of uncertainty, that's when we're more likely to behave on autopilot or that monkey see, monkey do type behavior. It's just human. So it isn't so much like anything to think less of somebody or even more, but just to be aware of these tendencies of the mind. Those are the conditionings of consciousness, right? Those are the things that prevent us from seeing reality. In NLP, and I talked about this on my speech on Monday in Atlanta, you've got 3 filters that happen automatically as soon as your 5 senses detect information. As soon as you see something, taste something, hear something, smell something, feel something, as soon as that happens, the filtering process begins, right? You filter things out, you delete things, you distort things, and you generalize things. It's that generalization that makes us behave on autopilot. But I'll read this again. God can't be known by the senses or the mind, which are conditioned. Initially, you have to work through the conditionings of consciousness in order to become free. How can the transcendental reality be understood with a non-transcendental mind? Perfect question. And that's something that we should think about if we want to come to a better understanding of what we call God. if we want to come to an understanding of what we call ourself. The misconceptions about God arise because man imagines God in his own image, but God is not a physical person. The spirit inherent in everyone is an extension of God. Just as space is all pervading, God is all pervading. The moment a form or shape is created, the infinite becomes finite, contained, and identifiable. Similarly, the individual spirit is contained in the body. That should also be remembered here for if any of you are doing astral work or doing any kind of slightly advanced Kabbalistic work, right? It's always good to remember this basic principle here. The moment a form or shape is created, the infinite becomes finite, contained, and identifiable. Similarly, the individual spirit is contained within the body. Anthony Hardy, peace, peace. Louis says, holy shit, I literally couldn't wait for you to get to this chapter, my favorite chapter. Yes, this is a good one. This is a good one. Answers so many questions. What's up, Court Singh? Okay, so I'll read that again, just in case you missed it. The moment a form or shape is created, the infinite becomes finite, contained and identifiable. Similarly, the individual spirit is contained within the body. So yes, the all is the all, right? Unconditioned consciousness, the greatest idea of God you can have, is infinite. But the moment it starts getting specific and taking form, right, that's when it becomes limited. So yes, within you, or within the core of your being, because this God essence is like it's like a pearl that develops layers and layers over time within the clam. Time adds these layers. Or in this case, the focus on a specific aspect of Prakriti begins to add layers and layers and layers until this omnipotence becomes an individual, right? It becomes Buddhi, which is higher self. Then it becomes ego. Then it becomes the five senses. And then it becomes inert. Because we talked last time, 2 days ago, in these last two chapters, or the last chapter, chapter 8, how the fact that Purusha is closely focused on Prakriti, right? That process starts to single out and hone in the existence of Purusha within Prakriti. Just by Prakriti being close to Purusha, as Purusha's attention starts to go on to Prakriti, the limiting process begins. Now we start to develop a ego, we start to develop a human mind, we start to develop a human body, memories, and that kind of thing. None of this is real, none of this is eternal, by the way, because it's constantly under the process of change. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that the individual consciousness is an extension of the cosmic consciousness. True. The individual consciousness is bound by the senses, mind, and ego. But the cosmic consciousness is free from the senses, mind, and ego. The individual consciousness is subject to the karmas of the body and the environment in which one lives. The cosmic consciousness is not bound by any object, space, or time. So God means the non-changing principle, something that is eternal, continuous, and constant, and the reflection of that nature exists in everyone as Purusha. Right? Anthony Hardy says the water drop becomes the cup of water. Exactly. Realizes that it was never any different and never separate. Society Eject says, yes, this book answers a lot of questions I had as a child. It's beautiful, clarifying a lot of misunderstanding. I love it. Yes. Nuru says, I stopped using the God word because of the distorted imagery which is loaded in that word. No single word works. Even saying Brahman is objectifying what can only be subjective and experiential. Absolutely. And that's always a tough thing depending on the audience, because in some circles close to the one that we discuss in here, this conscious community, some people get offended by the word God, right? Because in that word for them is still attached Christianity or some type of negative experience of the past. But like you said, it does get difficult to talk about this thing because it can't really be talked about in totality. The moment we start talking about it is the moment we start limiting it. But anyways, I like to use God because at least everyone has an idea of what that means. I'll throw a nice little disclaimer out there first before the objections begin. According to Samkhya, the seat of the transcendental nature is Purusha, which is the highest dimension in life. The supreme consciousness has come down from that high place to this low place. We have come down from there to here, and we have to use the same stairs to climb back up. We are climbing Jacob's ladder, soldiers of the cross. Amen. Please be seated. What did he say? He said, we've come down from there to here, and we have to use the same stairs to climb back up. Trust your unconscious mind, because there is an aspect of yourself that already knows all this information. There's an aspect of yourself that always knows how to tap into this information when it's most needed. What I'm finding now is the greatest rituals that I'm performing these days are learning how to really tap into my unconscious mind, right? The candle is just an accessory. The music is just an accessory. The clothing is an accessory. What I'm finding is that all the answers exist within my unconscious mind. I've shown you guys the list many times, right? Hopefully you know what I'm talking about, where you got the self of today, the self of yesterday, the childhood, right? The genetics, the race, the planet, etc., etc. You've seen that list. That's a list of memory. But not just individual memory. We're talking the memory of what we could call soul. Or in this case, higher self. Because that thing doesn't exist outside of nature, doesn't exist outside of Prakriti. And it's Purusha that is becoming aware of and observing these layers of memory. So it says here, these stairs represent the evolution through the 25 elements described in Samkhya. Therefore, Samkhya is not an atheistic system because it acknowledges the omniscient nature of Purusha. In Samkhya, God is not known as Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva, but as the highest Purusha. Samkhya recognizes that all beings, when they reach the level of omniscience, become the supreme Purusha. Ultimately, my nature is not limited or confined. It is omniscient. Omniscient. Omniscient means all-knowing. Omni meaning totally, meaning all. Niscient refers to knowingness. So in truth, Samkhya isn't atheistic because Samkhya recognizes Purusha as the highest divinity. Vincent Del Cristol, peace, peace. However, most people find it difficult to relate to or differentiate between the various levels of consciousness. They cannot comprehend the concept of an omniscient Purusha because consciousness has not been studied in depth. You see why it can be helpful to have a chart or some type of delineation? Because it helps you to understand what we're working with. Understanding is one of the best things you can have. Yo, I just realized the symbol of the microphone could be seen as a Shiva Lingam Yoni. We got the Lingam here, and we got the Yoni here. Interesting. But yeah, they cannot comprehend the concept of an omniscient Purusha because consciousness has not been studied in depth. Whatever people know about consciousness is superficial, and the mind gets caught up in the logical problems of plurality. Why does Samkhya say there is a plurality of Purushas? Remember last chapter, that's what we talked about. If you think rationally, the many Purushas are the little I's, and the cosmic Purusha is the supreme consciousness. The many Purushas, little I's, and the cosmic Purusha is the supreme consciousness. That supreme nature is called God, but Samkhya has not given any specific name to the highest Purusha, whereas other traditions have created symbols for God, such as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So Samkhya is not atheistic, but it is the only theistic system that has not given a name to the highest Purusha. Very key in understanding Samkhya, right? Samkhya discusses a higher power that is higher than everything else, but it does a great job in not attempting to limit, right? In describing and explaining this higher consciousness without giving it a label. Because the minute we give something a label, we start to limit it. Look what he said just a few paragraphs ago. He said the moment a form or shape is created, the infinite becomes finite. It becomes contained and identifiable. So the minute we put a name on God, the minute we start describing God, is the very same minute we start to limit what God can be. Like you said also, how can the transcendental reality be understood with a non-transcendental mind? That's one of the issues that cause us a lot of suffering and confusion, is because we have this tendency to try to label and determine everything right away, because there's a discomfort in our uncertainty. Remember in the beginning, I talked about the whole monkey see, monkey do. Well, the whole reason we behave that way is because it's very uncomfortable to be uncertain. As human beings, we hate open loops. We hate not knowing something. So we'll even go as far as to make some shit up just to get rid of that uneasy feeling, right? We'll literally make some shit up. And a lot of people live in lives where they've created so much confusion based off of their inability to rest in not knowing, that people have created so many complex lies that they have to keep up just to keep their quote unquote sanity. So again, when I talk about shadow work, it isn't simply just looking at painful memories, but it's truly addressing how you've arranged your reality, how you've arranged your belief system, right? Thinking about how you think. It gets crazy. Al Dickey, peace. Alicia M, good to see you. Society Eject says yes, and we give it labels from our traumas and our framework. Exactly. Now, see, here's the thing. Nobody addresses this. Nobody brings that idea up. So we wouldn't doubt what we know. We wouldn't doubt what we believe. We wouldn't doubt for a second because it's never been challenged. But the more that you learn, the more you start to realize, hey, maybe I don't have this all figured out. I'll be the first one to say, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I do not know what the fuck I'm doing. I will admit that loud and proud. But the thing is, you learn to Like I was saying before about these jumping to conclusions and these assumptions, the whole reason we do that is because it's uncomfortable to not know something. So since people have a low pain tolerance, instead of sitting and not knowing yet, we will literally force an answer or jump to conclusions. So obviously that'll cause problems because we're living in a world that isn't true. We're just making stuff up. So if you learn how to sit in not knowing something, you can start to find that that's okay. That's okay. Nobody knows anything. We don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now, 3 minutes from now. Lightning could strike and burn this whole house down. I don't know. Nor do I care. All I care about is being the absolute best me right now. And like I said earlier, what you'll find is that the answer is always there in the unconscious mind. Always there. So sometimes you do have to lean in walking and not knowing yet. But the key is at the same time to have trust and have faith. If in nothing else, at least in your own unconscious. I've demonstrated this many times just with myself. Not knowing what's going to happen next, but trusting that everything's going to be all right. Not wishful thinking in some fairy or some magical man in the clouds, but understanding that it isn't necessary for me to know the answer in order to move successfully. And also knowing that all things will become answered when they need to be, not simply because I'm uncomfortable with not knowing. The sooner you're able to do that, number one, you'll find that there's less things to stress out about, right? So you can live peacefully, your mind can rest. And number two, you start to learn how to access resources that you weren't familiar with before. Yeah, Micah, good evening. Let me know if you've experienced what I'm talking about. But anyways, it says here that Samkhya is not atheistic, but it is the only theistic system that has not given a name to the highest Purusha. This is a system that hasn't given a name or a title to God other than Purusha, because you got to call it something, right? Ultimately, Purusha is one. If a man becomes a father, his progeny will not be himself, but will be linked to him genetically. Genetically. Just as the Father is one, Purusha is one, and there are little ones which arise from him. If you study Ishvara Krishna's Samkhya Karika, which is in the back of the book, we'll read it tomorrow. If you study that Ishvara Krishna's Samkhya Karika, you will find that it is theistic. The philosophy of Samkhya was propounded in very early times when God was considered to be all-pervading and did not need a special symbol for identification. Later, different beliefs, traditions, and sects arose, each with its own interpretations and symbols of God. Then these different groups said to Samkhya, where is your symbol? Right? Because if you notice, every belief system has a symbol, right? A title, some type of limiting form. Now, on the upside, it helps the believers and the followers to access their God, but on the downside, it limits what that God actually is. It now becomes a God instead of the God. There's a difference. A God is an expression of the God. Sunshine Chick, good evening, good evening. Nicole Berkeley, peace, peace. Niru says, we are that original substance in stillness, when all vrittis have passed, when mostly in theta or delta brainwaves, same as the deepest of sleep, yet awake and radiant and stable samadhi beyond thoughts. Yoga also has no symbol, no reference to any god with form, but should it be considered atheistic or theistic? Yet Samkhya was criticized for accepting a formless god. The sects that arose after Samkhya said that Samkhya should acknowledge a form of God if it is theistic. They believe that God must be Sakara with form, and that any philosophy that conceives of God as Nirakara without form, or any philosophy that avoids referring directly to a form is atheistic. But the real difference here is not between theistic and atheistic. It does not refer to the belief in God, but to the form or formlessness of God. Yoga is also a Nirakara philosophy. In pure yoga, there is no particular form of God. I may worship Shiva, you may worship Lord Jesus, and someone else may worship Allah, and that is a personal affair. For those who feel God must be Sakara with form, yoga does not have an image, so they would classify it as atheistic. But for those who accept omnipresence and omniscience as the inherent nature of God, both yoga and Samkhya would be considered theistic, although their concept of God is Nirakara, formless. So you see that here. This high science of yoga, it isn't atheistic, but it does pay homage to the understanding that God is formless. That which we call God is formless. There really isn't any titles or images or ways to describe the type of deity that yoga is associated with. But that's also why you can come to yoga no matter what you actually believe or what you actually practice. Because, like I said, all these other gods are just an expression of the God, right? Of the formless God. So you could bring Christianity and Islam or anything else to yoga. You could bring Luciferianism and practice yoga, right? Doesn't Michael W. Ford do the same thing with all his different books about Luciferianism? Yet you find constant reference to this science, right? Ahrimanic yoga and all the other things. Kevros, SS God, peace. Some scholars say that Samkhya does not believe in the existence of God, but it accepts the authority of the Vedas. The Vedas represent knowledge, and knowledge is manifold. Any knowledge without the concept of a higher knowledge is never complete. Knowledge is a continuous and endless process. If you believe in logic and wisdom, then you are a believer. If you do not have to bow your head in front of an image, you do not have to bow your head in front of an image to become a believer. Ice is the Sakara form of water. You can give ice any shape, but once the ice dissolves, the Nirakara remains. That's an interesting metaphor there. You could say Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or any other, maybe not Buddhism, but any other type of religion or belief system that involves deities. You can see those as ice. But ultimately, when that ice melts, it's still water. So water is what would be that remaining common factor across all systems. All systems. That's what I've been looking for. Sectarian discussions enter the domain of philosophy at different points in history, but such problematic discussions are avoided because they are endless. If you know the basic concepts, try to analyze and understand them in your own mind, you will find that Samkhya affirms the Nirakara stage of realization. Know the basic concepts. Try to analyze them in your own mind. Here's a quote from verse Samkhya Karika verses 68 and 69. When separation from the gross body has taken place, and Prakriti, as the root cause, ceases to operate, having accomplished the purpose of Purusha, Purusha attains liberation that is both complete or absolute, and final or permanent. Sounds like crossing the abyss, going back into the upper triad. This profound secret, knowledge, for attaining the aim of Purusha has been expounded by the great sage. In it, he has considered the duration, origin, and ultimate dissolution of beings. Okay, last chapter. Chapter 10, Samkhya and Yoga. Both Samkhya and Yoga aim at reversing the process of awareness, which at present is identified with the senses and the external objects. So that's what Samkhya and Yoga both have in common. They both aim at reversing the process of awareness, which at present is identified with the senses and the external objects. That awareness has to be disassociated from the objects and redirected internally to experience our spiritual nature. Right? That should make clear sense right there. So both Samkhya and Yoga aim at reversing the process of awareness, which at present is identified with the senses and the external objects. That awareness has to be disassociated from the objects and redirected internally to experience our spiritual nature. So it isn't that you have to attain any kind of new awareness. You literally have to analyze and locate where your awareness is at present and redirect it internally. And this is a process that can be practiced in meditation, because you literally have to sit still and withdraw your awareness from the physical world around you. You have to withdraw your awareness from the things that you're focused on. And the more that you draw it in, the more that you start to see the origin and the source of that awareness. Because it goes from having your mind fixated on objects and events, and then as you bring your awareness in deeper, you start to realize that your awareness is actually focused on the hearing organ, the seeing organ, the smelling organ, the tasting or the feeling organ, right? So you start to notice that the origin of the senses is actually there, not on the things that you're aware of, but the body's function of becoming aware. And then as you continue going inward, you start to notice even the origin of those. And this is why the chart on the cover of this book, and also on page 45 of Tamas is so important, because it shows you a map of this consciousness. It shows you a map. So at present, at any given moment, your awareness is focused on a physical object, right? The 5 tattvas, or even a mental concept. This is extroverted awareness. We're placing it outside of ourselves onto physical objects and events. But like I said, the more that you bring your awareness inward, especially during meditation, you'll notice that the awareness is actually operating due to the influence of the indriyas. But if you continue going inward, you'll notice the separation between manas, chitta, ahamkara, and buddhi. If you continue that process, you start to go inward across this barrier of microcosm to macrocosm. And you start reversing the limitation that has happened here. Of course, the more that you practice it, the better you get at it. But this isn't something that is unique to everyone. This is the same path that everyone follows, right? It doesn't matter what you believe. If you actually sit down and sit still, you're going to follow this ladder. That's what makes this map so important, is because it's universal. This is why this chart here is a major influence of this chart here, the Tree of Life, because it's really the same map of consciousness, a map of consciousness relating to matter. And that's why these two subjects blend so perfectly, because we're literally talking about the same things. How does that quote go that I've been saying for the past couple of months? Kabbalah is the map, yoga is the vehicle. That's what I've been saying since January. Kabbalah is the map, yoga is the vehicle. So again, both Samkhya and Yoga aim at reversing the process of awareness, which at present is identified with the senses and the external objects. That awareness has to be disassociated from the objects and redirected internally to experience our spiritual nature. That experience of Purusha, the pure consciousness, may be termed as samadhi, moksha, nirvana, self-realization, or union with the higher self. However, the problem is that we identify with the sensory objects that give us pleasure. We condition ourselves to think that we are not able to live without these objects, and this is the beginning of attachment. Once that process begins, it's incredibly difficult to break free from it. It's so difficult that we spend multiple lifetimes trying to break free from it. Dare I say, millions of lifetimes trying to break free from that. Millions of lifetimes. The association of the mind and senses with an external object creates attachment. Attachment is a strong magnetic force which holds the mind down to the experience of the pleasure that we are searching for through our senses. The time comes when we suddenly find that all of the attachments in life serve no purpose because one day we will have to leave them. Isn't that a fact? No matter what you believe, that's one thing that you have to agree on. At some point, you'll realize that none of these attachments are important. Because one day you definitely have to leave it behind. So why not start investing in common sense now before these things are ripped away from you painfully, I should say. Nuru says, holding strong samadhi as you die eliminates the panic, reattachment, disunion, and re-embodiment which occurs at death. Die holding samadhi, which is a reunion in the one, and the problem of heaven is solved. In yoga, that experience is known as abhinivesha, the fear of disconnection. The fear of disconnection. The moment we realize that we are going to be disconnected from our kith and kin, society and family, body and mind, and that we, as we know ourselves to be, will cease to exist, fear arises, right? The moment that we realize that we're going to be disconnected, fear arises. Abhinivesha is mentioned in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and is often translated as the fear of death, but it is more than that. It is the fear of disconnection. Powerful. Powerful. It's powerful because this is pointing to one of the root causes of our behavior, one of the root subconscious causes. If you sit down and look at your life, right, especially the older that you get, or if you've come across a near-death experience already, you'll notice that a lot of your behaviors are actually based upon the fear of death. You simply want to do something because you know that one day you're going to die and you can't do it anymore. It's unbelievable how much of our behavior is coming from that fear, right? To a degree, even the sexual desire, right? Because the sexual desire, it doesn't come from the soul. It comes from the flesh. It comes from literally the body that you have. Originally, the body just wants to procreate, but also it feels good. But then there's another layer. For some people, they feel like they're going to get too old or they're going to die soon or whatever, so they have to procreate. It's an animal urge. It comes with the body. It's not something that you really wake up and choose to do. Maybe later on, but the origin of that feeling is a lot of times concerned with the fear of death. A lot of art is like that too. FOMO, fear of missing out. Mo B, good evening. What smell are you burning today? Lance Benfield says fear, F-E-A-R, friction energy against releasement. Nice. Yamaka says, been watching Lucifer and I see all these messages there. They're on. Yes. Niru says, and even saying hold samadhi is a bit off. You are samadhi at this depth, not clinging to anything. You are samadhi at that depth, not holding it. Mobi says, from these teachings, I'm learning to not fear death, but I'm learning to enjoy every moment with my family. And notice how that's a different energy, right? On one hand, if you're afraid of death and that's forcing you to do things, how can you really be enjoying it? Because you're doing it based on a seed of fear. But if you enjoy what you have right now, that's coming from a seed of gratitude, regardless if it's going to go away soon or not. Learning to appreciate things in the moment, you end up not even being focused on how much time you have left. If you're focused on the moment, it doesn't matter how much time you have left. All that matters is right now. Society Ejects is fear of not having an identity, right? Because what actually dies? The body dies, the memory dies, the ego dies. But the true self was never even born, so it can't die. But if you don't have an awareness of the true self, of course you're going to fear the death of the ego. Of course you're going to fear the death of the body, because you don't know anything else. Moby says, I'm burning hot chocolate drizzle. That sounds delicious. Hot chocolate drizzle. Chocolate isn't usually one of my go-to scents, but it's good when it's good. Okay, so again, Abhinivesha is mentioned in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and is often translated as the fear of death, but it is more than that. It is the fear of disconnection. The fear of disconnection arises because we are tamasic by nature. Tamas has to be understood in the right perspective. Tamas is not a bad or a negative thing. It is a conditioned state of existence. Please understand that. I think it's really easy to think that tamas is like the evil guna, but that's not the case. It's just another state of expression. For example, a lump of clay can be shaped into a pot. Once it takes that form, it is identified as a pot and not a lump of clay. The experience of identifying ourselves with our conditioned nature and the inability to extricate the awareness from that limited nature is known as tamas. That is highlightable. All right, so check that out. You've got a lump of clay, and that's what it is. But when you form it into a pot and set it on fire, it's no longer a lump of clay. You now call it a pot. So it's a lot like that. It's difficult to go backwards and pull the clay back out of the pot because we now see it, label it, and identify it as something else. He says here, the experience of identifying ourselves with our conditioned nature, clay into a pot, and the inability, that's the second thing, the experience of identifying ourselves with the conditioned nature and the inability to extricate the awareness from that limited nature, right? Being unable to separate your understanding of the fact that at this point, you're labeling yourself as a pot, but in truth, you're still a lump of clay. That's known as tamas, right? Identifying yourself with the conditioned nature and the inability to pull your awareness out of it. The belief that you are a human body that has to play a specific role That's Tamas. And the inability to see beyond yourself as a human body, the inability to see yourself from a higher perspective. That's also Tamasic. Alora, peace, peace. Welcome, welcome. Will Trent says this book is damn near yellow, LMAO. They give it to you so blunt here, just highlight away. Highlight highway. Yes, highly highlightable. Yamaka says it ain't evil and no need to hate itself. Exactly. Shout out to Kirk Franklin. The quality of Tamas expresses itself throughout life in the form of different psychological, social, and religious conditionings. Tamas creates the belief patterns which we have to struggle to change, overcome, or transcend as we develop. Well, that's key for somebody who is in love with neurolinguistic programming. Tamas creates the belief patterns that we have to struggle to change, overcome, or transcend as we develop. Because a lot of these belief patterns, dare I say most, if not all of these belief patterns, they come automatically simply by having a human mind and a human body. So a lot of this stuff, it's automatic. And guess what? It's also predictable. Like nobody really becomes anything unique or different or special. There's only a certain number of ways that the human mind can express itself. It's limited. We're told and we're taught that everything and everybody is different and unique and da 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 da. And from a perspective, yeah, that's true. But I like to look at things from the foundational level. At our foundation, there's only a limited number of ways that the human mind can express itself. Now, of course, you can paint it and dress it up differently, but ultimately, we all have the same needs, the same desires, the same fears, right? Limited. But he says here, Tamas, right? The Tamasic guna creates the belief patterns which we have to struggle to change, overcome, or transcend as we develop. And I'm thinking the word autopilot, because like I said, these things are automatic. To a degree, I mean, you got to think about how long we've been here as a society. Like, there's a lot of aspects of social control that are thoroughly perfected, right? So the system is set in place to help you develop into an expected type of being, right? Especially if you live in America. All you have to really do is, you gravitate towards a specific culture or a specific conditioning, and you're going to go through that pipeline and become something predictable. That's why parents sometimes who care about their kids don't want their kids to hang out with or associate with certain groups because they behave in a certain way that's going to lead to a certain destination, right? You've seen it before. You've seen it in high school, middle school. You've seen it in your own life. On the negative side, you'll see, he was a good kid, but then he ended up hanging out with the wrong people, and now he's dressing like them, talking like them, and getting into trouble like them. Whereas on the upside, a person might become more involved with a group of people who behave in such a way that allows them to become very successful. And they follow that pathway and become successful. So like there's all of the different paths in life are already set out. And the less aware we are of ourselves, the more smoothly we flow through these different pipelines, right? Most people are on autopilot, so they're naturally going to gravitate towards one path or another based on their bhava, on their character, on their nature. So sometimes when you wake up, you suddenly realize that your life is not where you want it to be, but you also have to be patient and kind with yourself because you were on autopilot. That's why you are where you are, but that's not the end. At any given moment, you can pick up and choose a different trajectory. So it's not just a bad thing, right? There's also an autopilot path for positive success, right? But the key is it's relative. You have to decide what you actually want out of life. You have to decide what you actually want, what path you want to follow. Then you begin to surround yourself with the ideas that can take you down that path. If you're not able to hang out with people who are millionaires, we have the internet now. You can take classes from them. You can at least consume their social media content. But the path is there for everyone. What path? Whatever the hell path you want. But if you find yourself stuck in a life that you're not happy with, understand that it was more than likely autopilot that got you there. But you can always move and change your position. Always. Always. It might be more difficult for some than others. But the very first thing, you have to believe that there is a way. And like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, you can trust your unconscious mind because that's where the answer is. You don't have to be aware of it. That's where the answer is, though. I promise you that. Cosmic Chlorophyll said, I may as well dip the whole page in yellow, right? Who knows? Maybe somebody out there knows. Tamas itself is not negative, but negativity is an expression of this conditioning when change is rejected. Aggressive reaction to change is identified as a negative outcome of the tamasic conditioning. The principles of Samkhya and Yoga aim at understanding how we are conditioned. Yes. So it isn't simply talking about all these different aspects of the mental machinery. Light is being shown on the schematics of the mind, body, and soul so that we can understand how we ended up in the position we ended up in. It isn't enough just to say, I want to go to heaven. It isn't enough to say, oh, I'm not coming back to this plane. No, you got to understand the map. You got to understand the schematics and how the vehicle operates. Doesn't it make sense? Even if you didn't have a car and you were taking an Uber, you still have to at least know the map, right? And you have to know how to gain access to transportation. But if you don't know the destination or how you're going to get there, it can be very difficult. At least become aware of the destination. That's more important than the vehicle itself. Like I said, for the most part, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't. But I know the destination, and I have literally no doubt in my mind that I'm going to get there. I literally have no doubt and no fear in my mind that I'm going to get to where I need to go. So with that being the case, my unconscious mind begins to uncover and reveal all the things I need to get me where I'm going. Higher understanding. Peace. Peace, peace. And this is that time where I have to ask you guys to please like the video. Hit the like button. If you haven't hit it already, go ahead. Show your homie some love. It helps the YouTube algorithm put my videos in front of eyes and ears of those who may be seeking this info. So go ahead and slap that thing. Make it clap. Or whatever these young folks are talking about. Alora says, Prakriti is a series of patterns. The map is learning how to understand the patterns so you can navigate to the destination, which is literally beyond the map itself. Absolutely. Absolutely. Aw, thanks guys. Thanks for hitting the like button. All right, let's keep going. The principles of Samkhya and Yoga aim at understanding how we are conditioned. Because we are in Tamas as long as we are in this body and cannot live without Tamas, we need to understand the components of life and existence which interact with each other and take us through the various conditionings. Samkhya and Yoga give us an understanding of this process and help to free us from the impressions created by our conditioning. The impressions created by the conditioning of Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva are known as samskaras. Or, to put it another way, samskaras are an expression of the conditioned state of Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. You guys have been getting a university level teaching on Vedic theology. How many people in the chat right now have learned so many new words than they have like within the past 12 months simply from studying this information? From the gunas to all the parts of the Antakarana to help Purusha and Prakriti themselves and everything that comes along with it. I think we've been given like a whole 50 new words, new vocabulary. This is how you expand the mind. You feel me? So you can literally say, you can't say this with everybody. You can literally say by watching Travis Matus YouTube channel, you got smarter. I'm just saying. I don't toot my horn very much, but when I do, it's true. Understanding of Samkhya. We have to work through the samskaras in pratyahara and dharana meditation before experiencing the higher levels of consciousness. In this process, yoga is the practical aspect and Samkhya is the theoretical aspect. We're getting close to something. Look at what he says here. We have to work through the samskaras. Now let's go back just so we can put this into context, right? Samkhya and Yoga give us an understanding of this process. What process? He says that as long as we're in a physical body, we're under the conditionings of the gunas, right? We're under the conditioning of the gunas. So he says here, Samkhya and Yoga give us an understanding of this process and to help free us from the impressions created by our conditioning. So our conditioning, simply because we're in a physical body and have a mind, we're conditioned, right? Now just simply, being conditioned like that, impressions have been created. Now what are these impressions? These impressions are samskaras. In January, we learned about the vrittis. We learned about the passive pravritti and nivritti. We learned how these vrittis are mental fluctuations that cause karma. They cause desire. They cause our behavior to be in a specific way, right? So simply having a body and a mind has introduced us to desire and different experiences that condition our existence. The impressions created by the conditioning of Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva are known as samskaras. Or to put it another way, samskaras are an expression of the conditioned state of Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. So simply because we exist within Prakriti, the matrix, nature, we're conditioned and we have these impressions that govern our thoughts and our behaviors. So how do we reverse that process, right? How do we go back to where we're trying to go? Because that's what he said that we're doing here. Right here in the very first sentence, he says, both Samkhya and Yoga aim at reversing the process of awareness, which at present is identified with the senses and the external objects. That awareness has to be disassociated from the objects and redirected internally to experience our spiritual nature. Right? So we are currently fixated and focused on these samskaras, on these subtle influences that dictate our behavior. So in order for us to experience the soul, spirituality, and that high aspect of God, we've got to turn ourselves away from these samskaras, turn the attention and the awareness away from these samskaras and back to the inner self. So he says here, we have to work through the samskaras. How? Where? We work through them in pratyahara and dharana meditation. We know that dharana means focused concentration and becoming one with that which you're focused on. Pratyahara can be sensory deprivation. Pratyahara is when you meditate and you withdraw yourself away from your hearing, your sight, your smell, and your senses. So through sensory withdrawal and through complete focus in meditation, that's how we work through these samskaras, right? So we do that before experiencing the higher levels of consciousness. We've got to go through these layers anyway, right? So the sooner that we do it and the more consistently that we do it, the better we get at it. And the better we get at it, the deeper we go. The deeper we go. He says in this process, yoga is the practical aspect, the practice, right? Practical means you practice it, is what you do. Yoga is what you do. And we're not just talking about asanas and stretching and postures. Guess what? Gyan yoga, right? That's a whole type of yoga. It's the yoga of the mind, remember? We went through this whole book. There's also karma and karma yoga, right? There's so many different types of yoga. But what they're all doing is they're helping us work through these samskaras so that we can experience reality beyond prakriti. So in this process, yoga is the practical aspect. Practice is what you do. And Samkhya, which is where we are now, Samkhya is the theoretical aspect. So there's a practice and a theory. And every occult book worth its salt is going to be separated into two sections, theory and practice. For those of you who study these occult books, for those of you who actually buy all these books just like I do, you'll notice in all these occult books, there's a study part and a practice part. First thing I grab right here is Initiation into Hermetics, right? Now check this out. Even in this, for example, Initiation 1 is theory. It starts with theory, and then it leads to practice, right? Boom, 2 sections. All the Ophel books are like that. What else? Even a book like this, right? It begins with the theory, and then it goes into the practice. On and on and on and on and on. On and on and on. Lance Benefield says, yoga, movement of consciousness and light through your reality. Okay, let's keep it moving. Yoga is influenced by Samkhya. Yoga is influenced by Samkhya. The source book of yoga is this right here. This is where it started. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And even that is based on Samkhya. It says here, yoga is influenced by Samkhya. Sage Patanjali, who codified the system of Raj Yoga, is also considered to be an exponent of the Samkhya tradition. In the past, there were 18 schools of Samkhya. Just as yoga is popular today, Samkhya was once a popular system because it gave an understanding of how we become conditioned and how we can free ourselves from that conditioning. Imagine that. At one point, Samkhya was like mainstream. That's pretty cool, huh? Samkhya gives us an understanding of how the senses work, how the mental states interact with the senses, and of the nature, interplay, and attributes of the gunas at an individual and cosmic level. I love this. I love this information. After this, you never will go back to that which sit back and write half-ass shit. Once you get the good stuff, the not so good stuff don't even taste good anymore. Al-Diki says the Quran even has 2 parts, a few knee practice and a outer practice. I can honestly say that the Quran, in my opinion, is straight up all we have studied in one book. But if you haven't studied this, then you won't understand. Yeah, I can see that. I'm pretty sure that most of these holy books actually are very legit. It's just that we haven't been taught by anyone who understands the esoteric aspect of the holy books. I mean, do you know someone who's teaching the esoteric aspect of Christianity? Do you know someone who's teaching the esoteric aspect of Islam? Do you know anybody who's teaching the esoteric aspect of these traditions? No, but we assume that there isn't one because we haven't been taught it. But even as you just said, Al-Diki, the more that you start to see what the actual, because we could say that Islam is the ice, but when it melts, you're going to get the water. Since you're starting to see the water, now the ice is making sense. The same way that, I've found myself going back to the Bible, not because I got scared by some demons, but because now I can see how this connects with everything else that I'm actually reading and studying and practicing. right? Jesus, 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 Jesus. I can't even get mad about Jesus because automatically now I know that you're talking about Tifereth, right? So there's no emotions involved. Society Ezek says, I don't know anyone teaching these books from a spiritual standpoint. Exactly, bro. Exactly. Like, no one's teaching Christianity from a spiritual standpoint. At least, I mean, I'm sure they're out there. It's few and far between. I'll put it that way. All right, let's keep going. Samkhya gives us an understanding of how the senses work, how the mental states interact with the senses, and of the nature, interplay, and attributes of the gunas at an individual and cosmic level. It gives an understanding of the relationship between the mind, ego, and higher intellect. Atakarana. Samkhya gives an understanding of the manifest, vyakta, and the unmanifest, avyakta dimensions, and how, as human beings, our consciousness and mind interact in these various dimensions. That's highlightable, but I don't want to make my whole. Oh, fuck it. That's what it's here for, man. That's what it's here for. Some time ago, the scientists discovered that the entire universe is comprised of only 5% white matter, and the remaining 95% is black matter. Who sat up here and counted this? All matter matters. Some time ago, the scientists discovered that the entire universe is comprised of only 5% white matter, and the remaining 95% is black matter. So, from the scientific point of view, the universe is created of white matter and black matter. This is what yoga and Samkhya have been talking about, but in a different terminology. The black matter that they talk about in science is the mula prakriti, the primordial energy, the primordial source, in which everything is fused like a seed. The seed has the possibility of developing into a tree, but if you look at the seed, you cannot see the leaves, the wood, the flowers, and fruits, although the potential exists. The potential inherent in the seed is actualized when the conditions are right. In order to actualize the potential of the seed, you have to plant it at the right time. If you provide water, compost, and protection, the potential of the seed will be seen as a small sprout, which will eventually grow into a big tree. But the inherent potential of the seed will not manifest unless the conditions are right. In the same way, the mula prakriti, or the dark matter, contains prakriti, the potential of creation, and individual identity, as well as purusha, the unified awareness, or God. Everything is within it. The 5% of white matter is the ever-expanding manifest universe, the created aspect that we experience through our instruments, body, senses, mind, and ego. This understanding is important because it creates awareness of another dimension of existence beyond the body. The material body is only one expression of the total life. The insects, reptiles, birds, and mammals all have bodies. All these different life forms are expressions of that cosmic force known as Mula Prakriti, the primal energy, interacting in this world and taking different forms. When the form is dissolved, the association with the objective world is severed. Then the consciousness becomes free to experience another dimension of life, to express itself in another dimension of existence, and this is known as evolution. Whew. Nuclear fire right there. Nuclear fire. Mad Bear, peace, peace. That is really important to understand because, I mean, the whole as above, so below concept. I was talking earlier about not having any fear or any doubt as far as my future is concerned. Even if I were to suddenly die right this second, I've learned to be comfortable with uncertainty. I've learned to be comfortable not knowing what's going to happen next. I mean, think about it. I realize that we really don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know. Nobody knows. So it isn't about preparation. It isn't about figuring it out and knowing what to do next. That's not where you're going to find peace, because that's not under your control, right? We feel comfortable when we have things under our control, but learn to be comfortable even when things are seemingly not under control. Like, that's really maintaining your frame. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I have a vision of where I want to go, of the trajectory. And just like what he was saying here about the black matter, white matter, dark matter, Mula Prakriti and manifest Prakriti, he talked about the seed, right? You could see that dark matter as the seed. And once it develops, it becomes white matter. But the truth is, the seed isn't going to flourish and grow and prosper unless the time is right and the place is right. The soil's got to be right. It needs to have a certain set of conditions to develop. So this is why I said it doesn't matter what it looks like right now. It doesn't matter if it's uncertain right now. I know that my seed is planted. So all it's going to take for my seed to flourish is the right conditions. So instead of focusing on, how do I exactly manifest this or that, now I'm focused on making sure that my soil is fertile. You get what I'm saying here? I got a vision. I'm not focused on exactly how to do it. I'm focused on making sure that the soil is fertile so that that seed can develop when it's ready. You can plant a seed outside, but you cannot force it to grow. The best you can do is make sure that you nurture it, you feed it, and you give it what it needs so it can develop. Likewise, I make sure that my mental state, my emotional state, and my physical state is in the best condition it can be right now, today, because I know I planted a seed, and I'm allowing that seed to develop. Here's the thing. You ever been a child working with plants, right? And you ever planted something, and you'll go back out there and dig it up to see how much it's grown? It will die if you keep doing that. So you learn as you get older, it may look like nothing's happening under the surface, but you keep watering the plant. You keep making sure that the conditions are perfect. And then one day, you'll see that it breaks ground. It sprouts. Your faith is renewed. You don't stop. You just keep doing what you've been doing. And eventually, it's going to become fully grown and express more fruit of its kind. Once again, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I know where I'm headed, and I know how to nurture my soil. I hope you're getting that. For real, for real. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. Because worry, fear, frustration, and doubt about your future, that is not good soil to plant any seed, right? That's not a good soil. That's not a good foundation. So I don't have none of that in my garden. And I don't allow anyone to bring it to me or leave it in my garden. You can keep that. You can keep that. What I got going on over here, it doesn't involve any kind of fear or doubt or self-imposed suffering. Learn to be comfortable with not knowing. I know it's hard, but the sooner you learn that skill, you'll start to experience life in a way that is less anxiety-inducing. Clearing the ground. In yoga, evolution is explained as the movement of consciousness from chakra to chakra. There are 21 chakras which are important in life. At the human level, there are 7, from Muladhara to Sahasrara. Prior to the human level, there are 7 chakras. And beyond the human level, there are 7 more. So you got 7 chakras in the human, 7 beneath the human, and 7 above the human. That makes 21. These 21 chakras indicate the development and transformation of human consciousness and the overcoming of various conditionings which restrict the awareness and perception of other realities. These 21 chakras indicate the development and transformation of human consciousness and the overcoming of various conditionings which restrict the awareness and perception of other realities. So there are other realities that can be perceived and you can become aware of them. But that awareness and perception is restricted. It's restricted. Why is it restricted? Because of the conditionings that we have simply from being in a human body, dealing with a human mind. That existence there creates conditionings which restrict our awareness and perception of other realities. So those 21 chakras, 7 beneath, 7 within, and 7 beyond, these indicate the development and transformation of our human consciousness. At present, our perception and performance are limited and restricted. We often do the wrong thing despite knowing what's right. Prior to the Great War chronicled in the Mahabharata, when Sri Krishna was speaking with the two parties, Duryodhana, that's crazy. I learned about Duryodhana in like high school. I had a friend who somehow studied Vedic information. And he suggested this would be the name of our band, Duryodhana. I'm pretty sure that guy was a time traveler. Anyway, Duryodhana, the head of the Kauravas, said, "I know what is appropriate, right, and just, but I have no attraction towards that." Oh man. "I understand what is inappropriate, negative, and detrimental, but I am attracted to that. I don't know what is making me act in this unrighteous manner. Despite knowing what is right, I want to do the wrong thing. I cannot extract myself from this state." What Duryodhana said 5,500 years ago still holds true in our life, even today. Sri Krishna later explained to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita that we are unable to extract ourselves from our conditioning because we identify with the drive and the search for pleasure, which clouds our wisdom. The senses, mind, emotions, and ego all have their own gravitational pull. Depending on what aspect is strong, we gravitate from one to another without any clear sense of identity or awareness of what each force is. Depending on what aspect is strong, we gravitate from one to another without any clear sense of identity or awareness of what each force is. When confronting an adversary, we identify with aggression, anger, hatred, and jealousy. When meeting a friend, we identify with the feeling of friendship, affection, love, and we desire to be in close proximity to that friend. When gravitating towards money, we identify with greed and possessiveness. So each association gives birth to a different conditioned state of mind. The different systems of yoga provide techniques to sensitize our awareness and to sublimate the passions which drive us, so we can understand what is influencing us from gross to subtle levels, and so that these conditionings can be recognized and rooted out. Sounds like some shadow work to me. If gardeners want to convert a weed patch into a beautiful flower garden, first, they must clear and prepare the ground to ensure that no undergrowth will restrict the growth of these new seeds. That happens first, y'all. I like the gardening metaphors. Easy. Similarly, in yoga, the ground of our head and heart must be cleared of arrogance, avarice, greed, frustration, anger, depression, anxiety, fear, and insecurity before a transformation of consciousness can be experienced. Trying to practice meditation with all of this mental conditioning is like throwing seeds on top of unprepared ground and hoping that the seeds will come up. First, the ground must be cleared if you want to connect with your spirit, which is the ultimate aim of yoga. Therefore, yoga does not begin with meditation. You must clear the ground first. Otherwise, yoga will never flower in life. Clear your mind and heart of aggression, frustration, tension, anxiety, adversity, insecurity, phobia, hatred, jealousy, competitiveness, and ego reactions. Yoga will flower only when the ground is clear. The yoga practices clear the mind and heart of the associations and attachments which obstruct both growth and consciousness and liberation of energy. The yoga practices clear the mind and heart of the associations and attachments which obstruct both growth of consciousness and liberation of energy.
Working out doesn't have to be this complicated. That's why I make walking my workout. The Skechers new workout walker. They're loaded with performance and comfort technology to add more spring to your step. Try Skechers new workout walker.
Society Eject says sounds like Romans 7:21. Oh, let me see what that's all about. Romans. Poison ivy, poison ivy. What? Where's Romans? I feel like I'm looking right past it. I know it's in the New Testament, ain't it? Page 633. How did I pass that? Anyways, let's see. Romans, and you said 7:21. Romans 7:21. I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. Right. For I delight in the law of God after the inward man, but I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then with the mind I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh the law of sin. Hell yeah, that's exactly what they were talking about in the Mahabharata. I know good, but I don't want to do that. I know bad. I definitely want to do that. Good stuff. Mm. Awakening to our true nature is the aim of Samkhya and Yoga. Samkhya gives the theoretical basis. Yoga provides the tools for disassociation of the mind from the external senses, which opens our eyes internally and leads the awareness away from the search for pleasure towards inner harmony, balance, and awakening. Samkhya gives the theoretical basis, the theory. Yoga provides the tools for disassociation of the mind from the external senses, which opens our eyes internally and leads the awareness away from the search for pleasure towards inner harmony, balance, and awakening. Samkhya, he's saying, is the map. He says also here that yoga is the vehicle. Interesting. Interesting. Where is this headed? Where is this headed? Development of spirituality. Two things have influenced the quest for eternal life: disease and death. What's the name of that villain in Batman? If you guys remember the original animated series and even in the comics, there was a guy who created this elixir of immortality, or this bath or something, and he could dip his body in it and he'd live forever. What's that guy's name? I know somebody here will get it. If there were no disease or death, there would be no yoga, no Samkhya, and no philosophy of life. Disease and death have prompted generations of humanity to find a solution. Yamaika says Raz Al Ghul. Thank you, thank you. That's who comes to mind. Raz Al Ghul. I thought more people might have guessed that. Did they make a movie with that character in it? I don't remember. I'm pretty sure he's related to Bane, but I didn't see that movie either. Disease and death have prompted generations of humanity to find a solution. Various systems of therapy have developed to overcome disease, and different spiritual philosophies have evolved to overcome death. Samkhya is the original philosophy of humanity, prior to any religion. Samkhya was the first philosophy to explain the connection between the individual, the universe, and the controller of life and death, Purusha, or God. The Samkhya tradition and philosophy has a direct relevance to yoga, as many of the yogic principles have been influenced by Samkhya. There's a story about a blind person and a lame person who are traveling together. The blind person cannot see, but has the use of his legs. The lame person cannot walk, but has the use of his eyes. So the lame person, sitting on the shoulders of the blind person, directs the way. The blind person follows his instructions, and together they reach the desired destination. The blind person is Prakriti, nature with the ability to act, perform, and create, but not to analyze, understand, or know. The lame person is Purusha, the consciousness which can see, think, and plan, but has no ability to move. So everything happens to please Purusha, the consciousness, because only Purusha can see what is happening. Prakriti creates, but Purusha observes. All created beings are the product of this play between consciousness and energy. Check this out now. He says the blind person follows his instructions and together they reach the desired destination. The blind person is Prakriti, nature with the ability to act, perform, and create, but not to analyze, not to understand, and not to know. So consider this. Your physical body, your five senses, your ego, and even the higher self, those are all Prakriti. So even at your highest, you're still blind. Check that out. You damn sure can't see God with the physical eyes, right? And it's extremely difficult because of our mind and our ego. But even at the highest self, that's the closest glimpse that we can have to what Purusha is through the perspective of Prakriti. We literally have to learn how to transcend the mind in order to directly perceive God. You literally have to understand how to transcend the mind, because the mind belongs to Prakriti, and Prakriti is blind. Prakriti cannot see Purusha. So if we're looking through Prakriti's eyes, we can't see. What did he say at the very beginning of this chapter? He said that, nope, let's go back to the beginning of the last chapter, chapter 9. Oh, I went back too far. Here we go. He says, how can the transcendental reality be understood with a non-transcendental mind? He says, God can't be known by the senses or the mind, which are conditioned. Initially, you have to work through the conditionings of consciousness in order to become free. How can the transcendental reality be understood with a non-transcendental mind? So even the body and the mind, right, and even buddhi are all Prakriti, right? And we expect to be able to see God through those lenses. No, we can only be led towards what is not Prakriti, and that's our best hope to transcend Prakriti. That's why there's a certain stage of enlightenment that is permanent, because once you see, you cannot unsee. But until we hit that line, until we cross that line, the enlightenment is always kind of temporary. We catch glimpses of it that illuminate life so much that our experience is altered. And at first, even for myself, the work is learning how to maintain that state, how to invoke it consistently and how to maintain it. But eventually, once you cross that line, there's no going back. So that's just something to consider, because that's the metaphor they continue to use, right? The blind person is Prakriti, the lame person is Purusha. Purusha has the consciousness which can see, think, and plan, but no ability to move. So everything happens to please Purusha. Everything happens to please Purusha. Your life is literally moving on a trajectory with a specific destination. Even if you cannot see it, right? That's what I've been talking about this whole time. Becoming comfortable with uncertainty. Becoming comfortable even though you can't see, right? Because there's an aspect of yourself that is beyond the need to see. There's an aspect of self that is moving, that is beyond the body and beyond the mind. And learning to trust your unconscious is learning to trust this aspect of yourself, of your highest self. That's what the whole Christian thing of faith is about, right? That's what faith is really about. They say faith moves mountains because you're literally working from an angle that Prakriti doesn't understand, right? You're working at an angle that is different from the angle of nature. Lance Benefield says, stop wanting to be and become. It's Dr. York. Somebody's getting the message. Good. So all created beings are the product of this play between consciousness and energy. Consider, what was the state of the universe before the Big Bang? And what happened after the Big Bang? The gases, clouds, and radiations intermingled with each other, giving birth to the different elements, the tattvas, as it has been described in the Samkhya tradition. From nothingness we came into this existence, and our appearance has been nothing short of a miracle. We are the product of a miracle, and the miracle does not end here. The sequence of miracles continues in our life, whereby we again realize the source of our existence. The discovery of the source is the spiritual journey. This is how the idea of spirituality developed, and this is the definition of spirituality: connection with the source. Somebody's getting this message. That's all I know. If not, sit with it. Take it to the unconscious mind. Allow yourself to ruminate on some of these things. And it'll pop up maybe when you least expect it. Sunshine Chick says the mind is the portal. Yes. Society Eject says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Exactly. All right, so let's finish this up. Journey back to the source. The source is not influenced by the notion of time, space, and object, or by our ideas and impositions of thoughts. The source is known as self or God. This concept of God or divinity is not the religious concept. Rather, it indicates the transcendental nature, which is responsible for working this miracle of creating something out of nothing. KP says, may not come when you want it, but it's always on time. And let go and let God, right? Facts. What's up, my guy? What's up, KP? It may not come when you want it, but it's always on time. Let go and let God. These are a lot of Christian cliches that is pointing to leaning on the understanding that we don't always know what's happening, what's going on, where we're headed. We don't know. It isn't possible to know all that. But what is possible is keeping yourself in the best possible state, right? Because learning is state-based. Performance is state-based. What do I mean by that? I mean, well, maintain your frame. Depending on what state you are in, mentally, emotionally, and physically, that determines what life you experience. A quick experiment that they demonstrate is how even depression is state-based. Like, try to excuse me, lean forward with your shoulders slumped and your head down. You got a frown on your face and you're eyebrows are furled up, right? Get into the physical posture of being upset, angry, and depressed. Now try to, when you're in that state of just being slumped over and your head's hanging low and you just feel shitty, try to force yourself to think about the happiest thoughts and feelings you can think of. And you'll start to notice a conflict, right? Either you're going to have to shift your physiology, or you're not going to be able to clearly experience those happy feelings. So then you'll have to try it the opposite way. Stand up straight with your head held high, your chest out, your shoulders back. Force a big ass smile on your face. And at the same time, try to feel depressed. Try to feel down and beat up and hopeless. It's difficult because the physical body and the position and the state that you're in has everything to do with what you're feeling inside. So life is state dependent. Learning is state dependent. Plays a big role. So when working with the spiritual nature, connection with the source, if you're full of anxiety and doubt and fear, this is going to show up in your physical body, right? You're going to posture yourself and angle yourself in a certain way, right? You're going to think certain thoughts because of what state you're in. But learning how to be relaxed, learning how to be at peace, learning how to be fearless, learning how to have confidence, these things are going to show up in your physiology. So literally, it's important how the lens that you see the world through is operating. It's important. Like I've said many times in this one live stream, and to people who talk to me personally, I'll be the first one to admit I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But that has nothing to do with my confidence. I'm extremely confident. I just know. I just know. And it's not because I have magical powers, which some people say I do. It's because I understand how to work with my own states, my own trance states, my own physiology. I stay confident. Nothing's going to shake that out of me. Because that is the state that I'm able to perform at my greatest ability. Right? If I'm doubtful and I'm afraid, oh no, well, I don't know how or if I'll be able to, those are going to bring certain thoughts and fears, and it's going to make me behave in a certain kind of way. And I'm not with that. I spent too many years like that. Now, I don't need to see that it's going to work to know that it's going to work. I don't need to see it with my eyes. I already know it's going to work before it even looks like it's going to work. How will you behave, you personally? How will you navigate through life if you were to carry this attitude that you just knew it was going to work out? Even if you didn't have the answers, even if you didn't have what you needed, but you still knew it was going to work out. How would you carry yourself if in the back of your head you just knew? You wouldn't spend any time moping around. You wouldn't spend any time feeling doubtful and afraid and confused. You wouldn't spend any time wondering, oh no, will I make it? Or what if I don't? You won't spend any time on those kind of thoughts. Literally, your state has a lot to do with how you experience the world. And when I say maintain your frame, you choose what frame you want to maintain, but hopefully you're choosing a frame where you can live confidently, where you can be focused on the outcome that you desire. And it doesn't matter what life looks like. It doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter what's on the news. It doesn't matter what the weather is. I don't care if it's raining, thunderstorm, hailstorm, tornado. I'm still doing what the hell I gotta do. Nothing externally can or will stop me from doing what I need to do. Period. That's a state of mind, right? So all that to say, pay attention to yourself and maybe learn how to be comfortable in uncertainty. Learn how to be comfortable even if you don't know the answer. Even if it is due in the next 5 minutes and you still don't know how. Trust, right? Trust. Even if it literally looks like it's falling apart in front of your very eyes. Even if listen, you got to have the kind of confidence where it doesn't matter what's happening. That's that God level confidence. Because what you'll find is that even if it looks like it's not working out, when all is said and done, you can actually look back and see how that moment in time was actually working in your favor. But you can't see that if you give up. Vincent Del Cristo says, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? Or Laura says, this sounds lame, but it works. Whenever something tough happens, smile, and you'll be able to withstand whatever is hard. I do that with tough stuff all the time. Facts. Beautiful love, peace, and greetings. Uh-oh. I got me some ashwagandha, you heard? Got that ashwagandha. Ashwagandha forever. Can't wait. Can't wait. Society Eject says, yes, my friend, and I realize every problem has a solution. You just have to sit your ass down and be still. Precisely. Man. I could share a recent success story, but it might not be very professional. But yeah, man, I exercise that all the time. Let's continue. Journey back to the source. The source is not influenced by the notion of time, space, and object. It's not influenced by the notion of time, space, and object, or by our ideas and impositions of thoughts. Listen here. This is look. This is the behavior of Purusha. This is the behavior. Listen, he says, the source is not influenced by the notion of time. It's not influenced by the notion of space. It's not influenced by the notion of any object. The source is not influenced by our ideas, by our impositions of thoughts. Whoa. Whoa. Not influenced by anything outside of itself or anything that is inferior to itself. Check that out. That's the behavior of God right there. The source is known as self or God. This concept of God or divinity is not the religious concept. Rather, it indicates the transcendental nature which is responsible for working this miracle of creating something out of nothing. The tree grows from a seed. The inherent potential in the seed develops into something much greater and more beautiful than it originally was. We have also grown from the seed of our parents. At conception, our journey of life begins, in which all the instruments, the senses, mind, and intelligence, the positive and the negative aspects of life come into play. The ideas of just and unjust, right and wrong develop, and we realize our nature, limitations, qualities, and strengths. The Samkhya system enumerates the elements that we have to become aware of in our journey back to the source. There are different approaches to achieve the source. Samkhya is the scale or the ruler with the millimeter notches, and it can encompass the whole universe, manifest and unmanifest. The scale of Samkhya has 25 notches. One notch is Purusha, the second is Prakriti, the third is Mahat, the fourth Ahamkara, and like this, the system evolves. So this is the chart. This is the chart on the cover of this book. That's the chart in Tattvashuddhi, page 45. These 25 tattvas he's talking about starts at the microcosm level, and it goes from Purusha to Prakriti to Buddhi to Ahamkara, right? You've seen it. You done seen it. Samkhya enumerates the elements as they have evolved from nothingness into existence. It gives knowledge of creation, life, and the subtle principles which influence our behavior patterns. The way to experience Samkhya is through yoga. The way to move through the 25 tattvas in the scale of Samkhya is by the path of yoga. I would even say I would even say the way to move through the 22 paths is through yoga. The way to move through the tree of life is through yoga. I would even say that Kabbalah is the map and yoga is the vehicle. Like, I would say that. I have said that many times. He says here, the way to experience Samkhya is through yoga. The way to move through the 25 tattvas in the scale of Samkhya is by the path of yoga. Samkhya is the map. Yoga is the vehicle. What? That's crazy. What? It's highlighted too. Samkhya is the map. Yoga is the vehicle. You can navigate your car by observing the map of Samkhya. While you are driving, you have to become one with the car. A driver has to feel the car, the power of the engine, and the movement of the clutch. He or she must know when to put the indicators on, when to use hand brakes. A driver can't just sit in the car like a passenger, unless it's a Tesla. If the driver is unaware, an accident is bound to happen. But if you are in tune with the car, then you will know beforehand about anything that may go wrong. You will just feel it intuitively and make adjustments. Similarly, while practicing yoga, you have to follow the map of Samkhya, attune yourself to the principles of yoga, and keep going towards what is real. Man, I thoroughly enjoy this book. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Good stuff. So there you have it. There you have it. Samkhya is the map. Yoga is the vehicle. You can navigate your car by observing the map. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Society Eject says, yeah, good stuff, but what candle do I use? Yo, Society Ejects was witness. I cannot make this shit up, y'all. Somebody actually asked that at the conference. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Somebody went through like this whole spiritual breakdown, and literally somebody raised their hand and said, yeah, I get all that, but what candle do I use? Society Ejects, you are a witness. We saw that. Somebody literally said that in real life. Amazing. Fucking amazing. There's that mimetic magic. What? Raise his hand. What candle do I use? You can use a red or a black candle. Oh my gosh. I love it. I fucking love it. I love it. But what candle do I use? All right, so that was the end of this book. Kinda, sorta, not really. That was the end of the book. After this, appendix, Samkhya Karika. And we know what this is by now, hopefully. This is the actual text of Samkhya. And it has Swami Niranjanananda's breakdown. So we'll go through this tomorrow. It isn't very long. But this is like the source material of Samkhya, right? This is like where he's referenced these different lines throughout the book the whole time. So we'll go through that. All right. So honestly, I hope that you guys and gals are picking up some of the subtle beauty of this science, right? The way that it's just laying flat on the table the different parts of this machine. And there's so much more. It can go even deeper than how deep we've gone. We're going to get into mystical Kabbalah after this. I feel that those of you who've been following these book studies are going to be well prepared to understand what's happening with mystical Kabbalah, right? Because that book, it's deep. And a lot of things, it's really written for people who already have an understanding and some experience with the occult, with Kabbalah, with yoga, and all these other things. So I feel that approaching mystical Kabbalah after reading these books that we just gone through, right? The Passive Property and Nivriti, Karma and Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, the other ones. What was the other one? Mantra and Yantra, that's it. And Samkhya Darshan. And the other Kabbalistic books we've gone through, Practical Guide to Kabbalistic Symbolism, Ladder of Light, the Kabbalistic Tarot. Yeah, it's about to go down in a big way. It's like a secret society level study for the general public. I don't think you guys are the general public, but you know what I mean. Nobody had to sign any paperwork in blood. All you had to do was subscribe to my channel and like the videos. Yeah, I get all that, Trav, but what color candle do I use? What color candle? All right, so that's that. I am going back to work. Aldiki says, are we going to do part 2 of Kabbalistic symbolism? Yes. Yes, we are. And that would be this right here. Right here. Volume 2. So we can get into the paths. You know, really, I took a little bit of a break, stepped away just a little bit so I can prepare for the live conference. And at this point, I'm kind of just rejuvenating, getting my energies back so I can pick up speed and continue where we were headed. Because we got some pretty interesting things in store for us, let me tell you. Man, oh man. I get all that, but what's the best yoga pose? What's the best yoga stretch? You might as well ask me what's the best pair of yoga pants to wear. Because even the good Swami said that there's not a mantra that's better than another. They're all going to lead you to the same place. You just might hit it from a different angle. Greetings, MC Maestro. Greetings, Frame Star. All right. Let's keep it moving. So I shall see you guys on the flip side. It's true. All right. I appreciate everybody. Thank you for being here. Hope you learned something. Tune in tomorrow night. We're going to finish up this book for real. And then on Sunday, you know how we do it. Live stream. And I know I mentioned it before. Still working on it. This shadow work class, this shadow work mastery system. It's on the way. It's on the way. Just polishing a few of these parts to make sure that everything's coming out exactly the way that I want it. But it won't take much longer. And like I said, I'm really working to make this kind of bite size, right? I don't want to make it too, what's the word? Intimidating, right? I don't want people to jump in and see like 30-hour videos and be like, nah, this ain't what I want. I want to make it like kind of bite size to give people just a little bit to work on each day, because consistency is way more powerful than just a big lump sum all of a sudden. right? A little bit every day is the best way to accomplish and build anything, because consistency develops a pattern, and consistency, taking it a piece at a time, allows you to really become aware of what you're actually doing, and it allows you to become aware of what subtle changes you might actually be making. So like I said, please be patient. It's coming out very soon. I really expected to drop it this weekend, but you know, a few other things happened, live event, etc., etc. But I hope you're having a great night. Hecate, peace, peace. Good to see you. Black woman, peace, peace. All right, so tune in tomorrow, and we shall finish up. T Dog, peace. Cosmic Chlorophyll says, "Do we have to RSVP for the lives on Thursday's Zoom?" No. I apologize. Honestly, I was still exhausted from my trip, so I just couldn't do it. Couldn't do yesterday's meeting. I should have made a post. I apologize. Please forgive me for that. I'm usually pretty consistent, but I was just exhausted. I had to get my sleep in. All right. So yeah, peace everybody. Thank you for being here as usual, and I'll see you tomorrow. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Love you guys. Peace.